This is part 2 in trying to determine why this 300E Mercedes takes so long to start when it's cold or when it's sat more than 10 or 15 minutes. So I put the car up in the air and I decided to take a look at the fuel delivery system. There's a panel that we had to remove. And I know some of you are probably thinking, well, Kent, why are you underneath the car? Why aren't you checking out things in the engine compartment? Well, let me explain. The owner told me he put new fuel pumps and a new fuel filter on. He did not change the accumulator. Obviously, from the comments, a lot of people said it could be check valves, and that's true. If these check valves, which are located right here, are not closing off, the fuel's going to leak back, and you're going to have to crank to get it started. A number of you said it's probably accumulator. Well, okay, he didn't change the accumulator, and it could be something in the engine compartment, like leaking fuel injectors. But because of the history, and this is why when you troubleshoot, you want to think about the history, look at what's been done. And you don't always want to believe the owner, though, but you definitely want to look at paperwork and see what's been replaced. So at least for now, I'm going to eliminate the check valves, but I'm not going to totally forget about them. And the reason is you can always get a bad new part, okay? So I'm going to focus on the accumulator. Now, a number of you have said, well, you can just take this hose off and see if it's leaking. Well, you have to be really careful, particularly on the 300E. Notice this hose is running horizontally. So you have fuel coming out of the tank, and fuel is already filling this hose. So if you cut the hose and say, oh, it's leaking fuel, and you assume that the accumulator is bad, you can be fooled. You want to make sure that the fluid is leaking out of the accumulator. It should not be leaking out of this side. There's a diaphragm in here, and once that ruptures, then the fuel can just leak right back down here. So if you want to do this test, what you want to do is you want to clamp off the hose, and then you want to pull this off and make sure that the fuel is actually coming out of the back side of the accumulator. So I'm going to do a quick test today without even removing the hose. And the way I'll do this is I'll get a good clamping device. You want a really good one. And we're going to clamp this hose off, and we're going to clamp it off real tight like this. Okay, now think about what I'm doing here. We're going to lower the car down, we're going to hook up the pressure tester, we're going to get the car running, and we're going to shut it off, and we're going to see if it leaks down. If it leaks down in 5 minutes, then it's not the accumulator, because we are trapping all the fuel inside the accumulator, so it should not leak off rapidly like you saw in the last video. This will be interesting to see if this works. I've hooked up the compression tester again, and my friend's in the car. He's going to get it started. We're going to start it just long enough to build pressure, and then we'll shut it down. And you're going to get to see why we're working on this now when he tries to get it started. Go ahead. Every day he's been having to deal with this, so he's going to wear out his starter. Oh, hey, what happened to this thing? Okay, let's take a close look at this. We got 39 psi. Let's look at the time. All right, it's 1:21. Let's see if it leaks down in 5 minutes again. I don't know if this is a surprise or not, because I think we had a pretty good feel for what was wrong with this thing. And sure enough, look at this. It's been almost 25 minutes. And we've dropped down to about 38 psi. And that's holding steady. I can guarantee you we need to replace the accumulator. That doesn't mean the accumulator is going to be the only problem here, but definitely something we have to replace. And I thought, for fun, let's get the owner back in the car and see how it starts now. Well, this might be an interesting test. It's not going to start perfectly, but it should start a lot better than it did earlier today. Go ahead and give it a try. Well, it certainly started better than it did earlier today. I think he's going to owe me for saving him his starter and steering lock it that way. Here's the old accumulator. And when we removed this, it was absolutely full of fuel. We just tipped this up and it kept draining and draining and draining and draining. And when we put the car up in the air, the owner said, "Hey, Kent, I'm really sorry. I have a full tank of fuel." And I go, "Oh, well, we're not going to drain the fuel. We're going to use a few tricks I've used over the years by using clamping tools." You can see here we used two of them. We clamped off the main line coming from the fuel tank, which would keep the fuel where it belonged. We're going to get some residual drainage from the filter and the pumps. And of course, we clamped off the little short line and pull that off. So we were able to do this with probably less than a cup of fuel spill. Okay, now I think we're ready to test again. You know, it's going to take a while, maybe not, to get it started, but we're back to zero here, and I'm going to have my friend get in the car and crank, and let's see how this starts now. All right, let's call that 10 minutes, okay? Look, unbelievable. It hasn't even lost 1 pound, maybe 0.25 PSI. That's all it's lost in 10 minutes. So I don't need to wait 30 minutes. You're gonna know within 10 minutes if there's a problem with pressure leaking back. So we've solved this problem. Now there could be other issues going on with the fuel injection system, and that's the purpose for this tester. This is the tester I build and sell on my website. It has a very unique feature, which I don't think most testers have, is this capture bottle. Look at how much fuel we've captured over the course of this test. A couple of keys to my tester, which other even more expensive testers don't have, is number one, a liquid-filled gauge for accuracy and longevity, and the other thing is right over here. These fittings, these are the fittings that are most prone to leak on most other testers. And I source these fittings out of Germany. These are Koline German-made fittings. And along with that, we test every tester for leaks before we ship them out. So when you get this, you're going to be able to hook it up with my 3 hours of video instruction. You're going to be able to learn how to do this yourself, and you're going to save a ton of money. Oh, look at this. It's almost dark. It's 5 o'clock. My friend came out today to help me at the shop in repayment for me helping him out. And this 300E's been sitting all day. It's about 35 degrees out. Let's see how it starts now. Oh, I think he's probably pretty happy that we were actually able to fix this. I mean, he's overjoyed.